Good morning, all. Now, today we are going to learn in disaster management is about capacity building. Capacity building is, why we need to study about capacity building. uh, in any disaster, losses only happens when your ability to overcome that situation is not at par from the intensity of with the intensity the or the hazard has struck you. Okay, so like for example, it's a mild flood like situation. If you know how to swim, your capacity to deal with a flood like situation, when you have the knowledge and skill set to swim, will improve your ability to handle and escape that hazardous situation, right? So that thing is called capacity building. So it has to be either individually or as a community. You have to build up certain skill set to deal with the extreme events. Okay, so if capacity like if capacity is the means to plan and achieve, then the capacity development describes the way to those means. Okay, so what happens is, if a capacity means that you need to plan and achieve a certain level of goal set, then capacity development means it is a way how you are going to achieve that skill set. Okay, so in this chapter we are going to learn about how to capacity building is important in disaster management, also in reducing the losses, and how we can inculcate these practices so that our community, ourself, it becomes more resilient against disaster. Okay, so that's what capacity building. Let's try to define what is capacity building. Capacity is the combination of all strengths and resources available within a society or community or organization that reduces the level of risk or effect of disaster, right? So capacity means it is a combination of your strength, what are your positive path, the resource available within a community, society, or organization that can reduce the level of risk or effect of a disaster. Now, there's another that is, the action can include resource development, whatever resource you require to combat a hazard, financial management like insurances, it can be diversification of fund and resources, then organizational learning, leadership development, and other activities are required for building up your capacity, right? So how do you build up your capacity? It is like for your resource management and financial management, diversification of funds and resources, organizational learning, so you have to develop a skill set, then leadership and development of and other activities are included in it. So now, why we need capacity building? It is for comprehensive formulation of objectives. Basically, how you comprehensively formulate the objectives of reducing the effect of any hazard. Now then we have have to conduct training and training analysis. Need to understand how training has to be implemented in at actual ground. So that has to be that analysis, that study has to be conducted. Then preparation of knowledge, skills, and attitude towards any hazard or disaster. And then administration of face to face training program has to be there. We have what are the various levels that we need to achieve in capacity building. So now we know there are various levels of disasters, like we have one of the classification of disasters like slow onset of disaster, sudden onset of disaster. Similarly, we have uh, you know based on intensity of the losses. We have categorized disaster like it is locally, it can be handled, or it needs state authorities and involvement in handling that disaster, or it needs national and international assistance in handling disasters. So that's the categorization of disaster. Similarly, when we are building up our capacity, we need to first of all, the first level of building of capacity is at individual level. Then you have to build up as a community or institutional level. Then as a semantic level, you have to develop this capacity building. Now individual refers to the process of changing the attitudes and behavior in imparting knowledge and developing skills while maximizing the benefit of participation, knowledge exchange, and ownership. So in individual level of capacity building action, we need to what do you call have gained knowledge toward of any disaster, for that say. Then our behavior has to change. Like earlier there was an behavior in general, public behavior also. It is still, if you go into the field and survey based on it, you will come across people that if in case a flood happens, then they will think of moving their uh, you know the materials and their household from that place. Okay, suppose you have a house in a flood prone zone, and if you go and investigate those areas, you will be finding the majority of the people are having a more reactive attitude towards the hazard that is pertaining there. But this attitude, like reactive attitude, will result or up to of greater loss to the property and also of that of life, right? So at an individual level, you must have complete you change your behavior. So in case come to know that your house is on the flood prone zone area, so either you will try to uh, build up your house in such a way that it has certain ability and capacity to withstand the flood like situation, or you will completely shift your location from that flood prone area to relocate yourself, right? Then you will try to develop more knowledge. If you are retrofitting your house and you're still staying in that area and building your house in a more flood resilient house, then what you need apart from that, you need to develop more knowledge how to deal with a flood like situation. What are the uh, inventories and resources you require, that in case this flood situation is there. So you are preparing individually, right? So you are gaining knowledge, you're developing a skill set to combat the flood, right? So that is an individual capacity building. Then you also try to insurance your house. If it is in a flood prone zone, you will try to insurance your house, yourself, and your property to have a more financial security. And as you have more financial security, the better your capacity will be to handle the disaster, right? Then we come to institutional or community build capacity building. It focuses on overall organizational performance and functioning capabilities, as well as ability of an organization to adapt to change. Okay, now in this at this stage, the institutional capacity building, you need to the organization perform certain functions to build up, or activities to build up their capacity. Like if you go to big companies and multinational companies, you will go and see as a structural, they will build up a capacity. Structural capacity will be like they will uh, fit their offices with fire extinguishers, with elevator fire escape elevators and fire escape routes. There will be more fire escape routes. Okay, and you they will have better water hydrant installed in those buildings. So this shows that they are building up their capacity to combat a fire accident in the building, right? So that is an organizational performance to for deal and capacity deal with the hazard like fire hazard. So similarly there are buildings or there are organization who will try to have a more earthquake resilient building. So they will have a building built up in such a manner, engineered in such a way that it can withstand certain amount of earthquake jolts, right? So that will be more capacity and a structural capacity building of a that institution. Similarly you will require to build up capacity capacity of a personnel in those organization. You will be requiring trainings and mock drills, right? And also training programs, mock drills will be required for these persons for you know gaining more knowledge, learning about how to combat that hazard in the institution, and what are the standard operating procedure that will be required to for in case of you are you are required to evacuate that place, right? So this is in an institutional level or a community level. Even you can follow it in a community level. In as an individual level it is more an informal way of gaining and developing your skill set to combat a hazard. Similarly at an institution it is more of a formal way of getting like once you are in a civil service those who have joined civil services, they are always given a post 6 month 3 months courses on disaster management. Why it is required? Because they are the these civil servants, like those who are IAS, will become a collector of a district. All right, so the a collector of a district or a district collector, district magistrate, we know that they are the head of disaster management authority at district level, right? So at district level, when they are the head of disaster management authority, they need to know, they need to have the knowledge and skill set to deal with various disasters that they are going to come across. Okay, so that's why these institutions have to push their personals and their employees to develop and learn certain capacity building activities during their period of working in that institution, right? Then you have systemic capacity building. It emphasizes the overall policy framework in which individual and organization operates and interacts with an external environment, also known as enabling environment or society. All right. So in this level of capacity building, what we have is, it is a way of systemic. Supposing you are working in a multinational company and there's a fire outbreak. So that company will have a standard operating procedure, that what you have to do first in the case of outbreak of a fire. So if a fire is outbroken in an institution, the first step that has to be taken is already documented and mentioned, and also the people are given training and are aware of that procedure, that what they are supposed to do. So supposedly the first step you need to do is to turn off the power supply. Secondly, you need to calm yourself, evacuate the building calmly with a proper filing, making a one single file and evacuating the building. Secondly, calling the firefighters. And thirdly, protect yourself first before you are trying to evacuate or help somebody else during that situation. So these are like general operating procedure that I have told you during an emergency. So similar procedures can be made for various disaster. In case of cyclone, it will be having a different procedure or an approach to deal with it. Similarly, earthquake will have a different procedure and approach to deal with that emergency situation. So it emphasizes on the, institutional policy framework that an individual or organization has to operate at the time of the crisis. Now, what are the we have various elements of capacity building. So what are the various elements of capacity building? The elements that is required to build up your capacity are like education on disaster prevention and response. So the foremost important thing is that disaster prevention, right? So in disaster prevention, you need to know what are the areas which are prone to hazardous areas, what are the elements that are at risk, what the vulnerability vulnerable areas that is to be addressed first. Then at the time of disaster, the responses, what are the who are the actors who are going to respond immediately, how you are supposed to respond, and after response, uh, you know uh, uh, what are the assistance that are required in that area. So those are the one of for the first element of capacity building. Then you have training to vulnerable communities. So those who are vulnerable and are susceptible to losses, we have to provide training to those communities, right? So then we have to, like, vulnerable communities will be those who are for example, flood prone zone or earthquake prone zone. Those communities, they need to give learning and training programs. Then you have to have collaboration with relief agencies. So the various agencies who are working in providing relief to the victims during the emergency, you have to collaborate with them as a individual level. At an individual level also you can do it, as a community level also you can do it, and even the government agencies are also collaborating with the relief agencies, which is non-governmental agencies. Now, mock drills are basically enacting of a or simulation of a situation of a disaster, and and a training. It is a way of giving a training if any crisis situation arises, and how you're going to deal with it. So mock drills are basically to give you practice to deal with that disaster, right? Or that a hazard. For example, you can have fire mock drills. Fire mock drills will help you learn how to evacuate, how to deal with the fire outbreak. And with the more practice you get by the more the in more drills you are conducting in your institution, the better the response of the individual will be. Okay. So now the better the response, because the improvement of the response will improve the time of reduce the time of evacuation, or responding towards the disaster, will prevent many losses. So better timing of response will improve the loss, reduce the losses. Then you have to have household preparation. What are the household preparation you require? Then understanding warning and de-warning messages. Then you need to understand warning and de-warning messages. Now first aid preparedness has to be established. So you have to learn certain level of first aid given to the victims, and that even the availability of the first aid in a nearby and approachable areas should also be there. All right. Now, let's talk about education on disaster prevention and response. It includes educating the vulnerability community as well as the population of the state to the possible hazard and their impact in their areas. It also covers preventive measures and response strategies in case of disaster strikes the any area. All right. So what happens here is that It includes the vulnerable community, those who are prone to the hazard, as well as the population of the state is possible hazard, and their impact on that area. All right. It also covers the preventive measures and response strategy in case of disaster striking the surface. All right. Then we have training to vulnerable communities. How do we provide training to vulnerable communities? It includes imparting the basic training of the disaster management to the volunteers and local people. It aims to teach the people that they can survive and help others. Okay, so training to vulnerable communities, including imparting basic training. So how basic training can be in first aid, in evacuation, in providing relief, assistance, in providing rescue operations. You need to train your community members or community to deal with that, disaster management, so that they can volunteer. And because voluntary in the time of crisis management is very crucial. Why? Local people know the areas better, they know how to deal with it. So hence you need to include the local and the people of that community who have faced that crisis. So it aims to teach the people that how they can survive and help others, right? So the survival of the community will only depend upon the kind of inclusion you are doing. You are getting your people into for disaster management. All right. Now, collaboration with relief agencies, various collaborations are required for relief agencies, so that they can, provide the assistance in a more efficient and in a cohesive manner. It includes the collaboration between government as well as non-government agency involved in the relief work through the state of all kind of disasters. Right. So it includes collaboration between government as well as non-government agencies like NGOs, and involve the relief work through the state with all kinds of disasters. So they work with all kinds of hazards and disasters, right? So this collaboration of government agencies and non-government agencies has to be established. Why? Because supposingly a government agency is providing a certain relief activity in an area, and a non-government agency is also doing the same relief activity in that area. That means you are overusing your resources in one particular region, which is sometimes goes waste, right? Suppose both the agencies are giving food, supplying food to the people. So it might turn out that the excessive supply of the food will turn out the people will be wasting their food that they are given by these agencies. So they need to collaborate that they are not using the what do you call the resources in, overusing the resources for doing the same work again and again. All right. So with the collaboration you can, delegate and, decentralize your activity and action to assist the victims. All right. And the agency involves really work throughout the states with dealing in various disasters, and also various aspect of the assistance that these victims require. They somewhere they will require food, somewhere they will require food and medicine, then legal assistance, then, psychological assistance, all various types of assistance which is are required. Okay. So they are disaster, all dealing with all state disasters. Now, mock drills. Just hold on, I've just got a call. uh Let me. Hello. Good morning, ma'am. मैम अभी मैं लेती हूँ मैम, मेरी क्लास चल रही थी तो अ, मैंने वो नहीं लिया मैम, अभी अपडेट नहीं लिया मैम। मैंने इन्फॉर्म तो कर दिया था कल रात को सबको। मैम मैंने सबको इन्फॉर्म कर दिया था मैं। यस मैम, मैंने मैम फीडबैक अब। मैम मैं एक बार ले लेती हूँ मैम फीडबैक। वैसे तो मैम अपूर्वा ने। राइट। मैम मैं एक बार पूछ लेती हूँ उन लोगों से मैम। ओके। Now mock drills. It is a method of practicing how a building would be evacuated, and in the event of fire or other agencies, usually the building is existing fire alarm systems is evacuated, and building is evacuated as if emergency had occurred. Okay, so in mock drills what you do is, it is a method of practicing how building would be evacuated in the event of fire or any other emergency. Usually the buildings existing fire alarm system is evacuated, and the building is evacuated as if it is an actual event. Okay. So household preparation, it covers the preparation of keeping all valuable items in waterproof bag, keeping minimum clothings, and being ready with the plan of evacuation. Okay. So that is your what household preparation. So household preparation is basically you're preparing yourself with the basic resources that is required to evacuate or sustain yourself in the time of emergency. So it covers the preparation of keeping all valuable items in waterproof bags, keeping your minimum clothings with yourself, keeping a certain food supply, and being ready to evacuate the area of disaster. Now, understanding warning and de-warning messages. Now, how do you understand warning and de-warning messages? That is, discrimination of early warning message to the vulnerable community is is the next task which can be achieved through the better training and involvement of all stakeholders. Right. So, dissemination of early warning messages to the vulnerable community, or the area, or the community who are at risk of losing life and property. So the next step which is achieved is by giving them a better training, like in case of cyclone. So we are aware that a cyclone is a recurring phenomena hitting the coastal areas of the country. So you will provide the community, these community who are settled by the coastal areas will be vulnerable to cyclones and the effects of the cyclones. So you will provide training them, and involve the various stakeholders in developing their capacity to deal with the cyclones. All right. So early warning system is a very key essential part in reducing the losses. So hence it also, if you have established a good early warning system, it also have better response, because the earlier the warning system is given, the people will react better with the training guidance also which has been given to them. Then first aid preparedness, along with all necessary things, it is important to have all well stocked first aid kit to deal with the minor accident and injuries. Okay, so minor accidents and injuries will require first aid preparation. So you need to have a well stocked first aid. The basic medicines has to be there in all the organization, as well as with at your home also you need to have the first aid kits provided to you, right? And apart from first aid kits stocking up, you should also be knowing the basic of providing, like somebody has got burned or somebody has got cut, so you should know which medicine to apply on those injuries, and how to burn injury will be dealt in a different manner as compared to the cut injury, right? If your one of your limb has broken, so how to give a stent, that is a basic step of giving a first aid to a person. And if somebody has got a head injury, how to deal with that. So that is the first aid preparedness that is required in at an individual level. All right, and then as an inventory, you need to have a basic medicine to assist the victims. Now, capacity building, that is communities and techniques. All right, what happens here is information gathering, fast standby task forces given in crisis mappers, and real time solutions are given. Okay, then you have solving a series of problems while educating the individual of building the community, and exposing a software based solution, networking based solution, or or other technological based solutions to them. Okay, then you have specific solution, so that is a type of crowdsourcing that can be open to all restricted areas. Like crowdsourcing means you are involving more and more people to deal with the disaster with a minimum reward. The great ideas and solutions can be generated and can simulate the individual to learn and develop the skill sets. Okay, now training organization to use building skills for dealing technique requirements can lead to longer and be more focused for training needs. Okay, so we need to have a workshop based training that is to be given. Okay, so in a workshop based training, you will have to organize a training program, then to build up the building skill sets, like training programs for mock drills of fire accidents. So that is a training program building up how to deal with a fire incident. All right, so then you have to have a detailed technical requirements, that is to deal with that disaster. Like for fire, you need to have a detailed technical knowledge about what type of fire extinguisher are used on which type of fire. An oil based fire will require a different type of fire extinguisher than that of a paper based fire, or electric fire, fire coming out from a circuit, or fire coming out from paper, or wood like components will only require water for that, say. And an oil based fire will require a different type of a foam based fire extinguishers. An electric short circuit will require again a foam based, or an such as fire extinguisher which cuts off the oxygen supply, so that the fire does not take the speed, right? So then that is how you build up the various steps and techniques in building the community, where you are training them, when then you are giving and gathering information about the areas and what are the past incidences that has happened. Then you have taken in consideration, in case these happens, what are the steps that has to be taken for solving of the problems. All right, then you have a specific solution sort type of way, where you include all the community members and crowdsource to help assist the victims. Okay, now factors of capacity building. So what are the various factors that affect capacity building, or that has to be considered during capacity building? Connect between disaster and development. So the connection has to have a we have to have a connection between disaster and development. So we need to have more approach that in these areas are prone to hazards, and the developmental activities or action has to be in coincidence with the what do you call it, in coincidence with the disasters, or in coincidence with the developmental activities. Then you need to have a more sustainable development and traditional wisdom inculcated, because traditional wisdom is based on the past experience of the people, right? So you cannot ignore traditional wisdom with these for a developmental activity. A developmental activity will only be sustainable if you inculcate the traditional wisdom into the sustainable developmental active action and programs. Like, areas, like there are certain tradition that we continuously follow, that we should not go there, we should not do this. Why these traditions are done? They are done to avoid certain unpleasant situation. To avoid these unpleasant situation, there are reasons. So these traditional wisdom can be very beneficial in a developmental activity, which can reduce the losses. All right. So the participation of all stakeholders is very important. So all the stakeholders, whether it is government departments and agencies, non-government departments and agencies, your community members, educational institution, research institution, or then you have what you call medical assistant organization. All these things, all the stakeholders are participating together in hand will help build the capacity of that region, right? So education institution of a area can contribute in developing the awareness programs and training programs among the people. Similarly, research institution and researchers can research in that area of how to deal with that hazard, and how the effect and risk of the hazard can be reduced, right? Now we have mainstreaming disaster risk reduction. Disaster risk reduction is is an activity, is a process that has to be inculcated at at every level, basically, starting from school level of teaching to college level of training, to various departmental training, which has to be in a periodic manner. So this will make you understand what are the disasters risk associated in that region. So every disaster will have a different level of risk. What are the vulnerable sectors of that region? What are the risk of losing out? And there can be risk of losing out buildings, there can be risk of losing out life, there can be risk of losing out even livelihood. So study and analysis of losses will has to be mainstreamed and understood at every level of the community, that is going to be falling prey to the disaster. Now then you have to gender mainstreaming. That means you have uh, gender based identification of the vulnerable sectors. Then you have basically demographic based identification of vulnerable areas, like women and children and old are generally considered and the weaker section, that those who need assistance. Okay. Individually it may be that women and a few children are trained and have an idea how to deal with the disaster, but as an overall, women, children and old people are the vulnerable portion of the demography. All right. Now similarly, you have psychosocial support in disaster aftermath. So disaster is such an event that plays and puts a scar on your psychological well-being. So for a psychological well-being, you need a support and assistance. So suppose somebody has lost their house in cyclone, right? So that person might feel remorseful about losing his house to cyclone, his many memories and his many things that is lost in the cyclonic storms. And the emotion, because a person who is staying in the house has developed some emotion and affiliation to that house. So that emotion and affiliation, when it suddenly goes off, you feel a sense of insecurity, you feel a sense of emptiness while that this during the aftermath of disaster. And slowly as it sets in, it will cause anxiety and panic in you, that what will you do next, where will you go, where how if you lose out your precious this is as precious things have lost. So how, what will happen, that the memories that has washed away with the house that has gone in the cyclone. So these anxiety will hamper your mental peace. Some people can become hysteric, some people can become, suicidal. So every person, every individual will have a different psychological responses. So they need a psychological support system that a community member, your community members can provide, an individual can provide you, or you sometimes you also need psychosocial support from a trained person. There are NGOs who are supporting the people, those who are evacuating and giving relief activities to the victims. They also provide psychological and social support to the victims, right? Then we have preparations of training manuals. So whatever the training guidelines and manuals are given, that preparation has to be done, where you are checking your inventories, where you are checking your training steps and programs, and standard operating procedure and other things. So then you have a unique training approach. So you have to change the various approaches of dealing with the training and giving training. Okay, so let's talk about the first point, that is the connect between disaster and development. That is backward and forward linkage between the developmental relief and rehabilitation operation, constituting a complex network of relationships. So these relationship has to are being complex, but they has to be a free flowing way of dealing a disaster. So that has to be a proper linkage between political and various departments and developmental activities. Then relief actions and rehabilitation operation also has to be, to and fro coordinated between the government and the non-government organizations, and a well established relationships. Okay, so let's start with identifying the needs, what we need to deal with a disaster. Then what are the gap areas that needs to be assisted. Then we have planning and capacity building. Then we have decision to invest. Okay, then we have to build and expand network capacity, promote awareness and drive utilization, then assess the outcomes and impacts. Okay, then we will go to next thing is that improving public relations has to be established. Development of corporate web images has to be inculcated. Then strategic planning and management has to be inculcated. Improving procedure, improving information technology, personal management and training has to be inculcated. Improving organizational structure, improving documentation flow, improving the information flow will all contribute to the capacity building of a organization. Now training methods can be, first we need to analyze the need of training. Then the knowledge base and skill base training has to be there. Then role of capacity building functionary towards the effective conduction of the uh, training has to be inculcated. Training needs is what are the various inventories or various products you require for training this the group, or training the organizations. Whether you are training children, so you need, certain tools and props to explain them the cause and effect and how to go about it, right? Then you need to have a good amount of content to make their brainstorm about it. Then what are the developmental activities that will prevent it, and that will also enhancing the situation. So then you can share it with your self personal experiences. Then what are the skills that is required to deal with that particular disaster. Then how what are the training programs that is you need to take up for learning better skill set to deal with that disaster. Okay, knowledge base is that is skill set, ability to perform a task. Then you have to have a knowledge, then competency and motivation to do that task properly to reduce the effect of the disaster. The role of capacity building functionary towards the effective conduction of a disaster is like the training tool that is made use of many tools in its conduction for the workshop and conventional lectures, simulation, graphical pictures, charts, flow charts, case studies. They can be, inculcated as a role into building up capacity functionally. Now, a hazard, vulnerability, risk, and capacity analysis during the emergency can also be implemented. All right. So this is a model where it shows that at national level, at local level, and at an organization, what are the various activities that can be taken up for disaster management system and international assistance and local assistance. The importance of capacity building in the future is like it. Basically, its success, future successes, is that the entities provide need for social services, education, then it provides health care and starts to improve the well-being of a community, and which many people are demanding to develop their needs. All right, so mission and vision and strategy has to be there. Service delivery and impact has to be taken up. Strategic relationship has to be developed. Resource development has to be taken up. Internal management and operation has to be taken up by the governance and the leaderships. Capacity building being the first step, then you have developed human potential, then security and development is the last stage that we reach to deal and combat the disaster. So in on and all, on in the end, I would say that the process through which individual, organization, and society obtain strength and maintain the capacity to set and achieve their own developmental objectives over time is what capacity building is. It is important because the evaluation process coupled with the implementation component helps ensure organizational structure and stability, as well as the, at every level. Okay, so that is what your capacity building is, and your need to have capacity building. So we will meet you next for the next lecture. Have a nice day.